right, are we ready? Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. You know, it's May. It's, spring is almost here. I've made a couple calls, and I think the next couple days are going to be sunny. I hope. We'll see. But really what I want to do tonight is to kind of talk about what I've been up to as a state senator for North Andover, and also kind of make sure to give you enough time to answer any of your questions. And you can ask me about anything. You can ask me about State House stuff, anything local stuff, though I don't have as much knowledge about the local stuff. You can ask me how I think the Bruins, the Celtics, Red Sox, anything like that are going to do. But really, anything that's on your mind. But first of all, I want to thank Kathy for allowing us to come here tonight in this amazing, beautiful facility. Probably the nicest senior center now, really, in the area and stuff. And I think we have something for you if I could. Here we go, right here. So this is what we do. We actually give out citations, and I do want to give one to Kathy, if you could come up here. And this is a honor of your leadership as Director of Elder Services for North Andover, ensuring high-quality program for our seniors. And this is signed by the Senate President, Karen Spilka, and myself, Barry Finegold, because a building is great, but it's about what happens in the building, and obviously Kathy does an amazing job. So thank you so much. We like surprises. And now I'll get in trouble. If I don't do it, hold on, Kathy, come back. I have to do an official thing. Thank you. And also, we're on cable TV for everyone tonight, so this is being broadcast live. So, just remember that there's other people watching. And I know we have another one, but I do want to, we'll do that later. But I do want to recognize also, we have Ed Moskowitz from the school committee. A round of applause. And our great town moderator, Mark DeSalvo. And a member of our select board, Janice Phillips. So, I know a lot of you know me, but you may not know of me. I am Merrimack Valley through and through. I grew up in the Andovers, as I call them, and haven't gone far in life. I'm still here, still in basically the same town I grew up with. I now am married. I have 3 kids. I have one in college, one in high school, and one in middle school. And for me, this is obviously a job, but this is where I live. And this is important to me because your community matters. And for someone who has grown up in this area, I want to see this area continue to thrive. What I want to talk about is some of the things I'm doing in the State House, some specific areas, and we'll talk about some local stuff. Then after that, we'll open up for questions. I think that the first thing we really want to talk about is some of the things that I think are important that I'm personally working on. One of the, this may not affect you, but you might have grandkids or kids, the issue of youth sports. And people are like, why are you involved with youth sports? Well, what's interesting is that if you play college sports, you're regulated by the NCAA. If you play high school sports, you're regulated by the MIAA. But if you play youth sports, it's kind of the Wild West. And as someone whose kids play sports, and as someone who has played sports their whole life, I sometimes get concerned where my son, who's in 6th grade, is playing a hockey game at 9 o'clock at night, 6 a.m. game, and most years he'll start before the Bruins, and depending on how the Bruins do tomorrow night, he might continue to play after them. And the point is that I'm not so sure it's a great thing to have these young kids, playing so much, but they're also telling these young kids you should only play one sport. And there's a lot of things that we're seeing out there. There's health issues on the physical side. There's mental health issues because all the stress and pressure we're putting on these kids. And the results aren't great. Like once upon a time in ice hockey, when it came to colleges like BU or BC, the majority of these kids came from Massachusetts. That's no longer the case. But in a place that has a different model for youth sports, Minnesota, in their colleges, they're still putting the majority of their kids in those colleges. So we're playing our kids more, we're stressing them out more, we're physically hurting them, and we're not getting the results. So what I'm asking to try to do is actually have an authority over in Massachusetts to regulate youth sports. And once again, I'm someone who played high school football, college football, so I believe in youth sports, but I do think there has to be some guidelines to make sure we protect our young people. The other thing I'm working on is privacy. So we're talking about sports. About a couple weeks ago, kind of a funny story. So my wife says to me, Max, my son Max, kind of a big kid, says, he's size 8, okay, or maybe he's 9. So I'm still thinking he's a kid, so I order kids' cleats size 9. They come in the mail, they're like this big, because I got the wrong cleats. I got them the right cleats. But then for the next week and a half, every time I turned on my computer, guess what showed up? Cleats. Nike cleats, Under Armour cleats. And I just wonder, is that such a good thing for our society where there's so much, we're giving up so much freedom and there's people that are following us? And is it a good thing that so many people have our information? And the question is, where is that information going? I'm particularly concerned. I have 2 teenage daughters. They're on Instagram and TikTok all the time. And where is that information being sold to? And what's really interesting is in Massachusetts, we don't have a law that protects your privacy. But if you read the Boston Globe and you read the digital edition, it does say if you're a California resident and you don't want us to follow you, i.e. using cookies, you can opt out. So people in California can opt out of our local newspaper, but here in Massachusetts you can't. So that is why I believe we need a privacy bill. The other thing that I'm also working on, and it deals with political campaigns, this new technology is called deepfake, artificial intelligence. So a lot of you might have heard that there was a fake robocall from Joe Biden saying that you don't need to vote. But what's also happening now is that they're just distorting images of people. Like someone could do an image of me smoking a cigarette. They could put an image of me in a jail prison suit. And the question is that good for society? And what the bill does, it says you have to disclose that your images was done by artificial intelligence. And I think that at the very minimum, that should at least give people an understanding that if you look at an image and you say, hey, this is done by artificial intelligence, when you're not sure if that person really is who that person is, I think that's a good thing. And understand that you might not have seen these images now, but I promise you, as this presidential election really gains steam, you're going to see a lot of distorted images. And no one wins. Democrats or Republicans do not win when you don't get the truth when it comes to your candidates, whether you like them or not. So that's another bill that we're working on. Something that I'm also very much involved with is I chair economic development. And it's a really cool committee because our job is to make sure that we remain competitive as a state. But there's some really big concerns out there. We are losing people ages 25 to 44 in record numbers. And when I sit down with CEOs, I ask them, what can I do to be helpful to you? What does your business need? And 100% of the time, it comes back to one issue: housing. And the challenge is affordable housing, absolutely. But the one thing that we have to understand is there's 2 parts of the country where rents haven't come down: Massachusetts and Southern California. And the reason why we haven't come down is because we're not producing enough housing. And there are some things that in our housing bill that we are looking at. And I understand that everyone's not going to like every one of these things. But if we don't take steps to increase housing, it's going to harm communities like Andover and North Andover in a big way. Because these companies over here that helps our commercial base aren't going to be able to have the employees to fill these companies. And ultimately, these companies aren't going to stay here. And ultimately, we're not going to have a strong commercial base. So the first thing that we're looking at is a thing called ADU. accessory dwelling units. What does that mean? Well, let's say you have a single family and you want to add what we call an in-law on that. It's very difficult to do that. We want to make it by right. And what that means is that you can add up to 900 square feet onto your house. Now, California has already done this. And people are like, oh, they're going to be coming out in droves. California is probably 5 or 6 times our size. They've had this, law for a little bit. They've only had 8,000 units happen throughout this whole state. So I don't think we're going to have the numbers come in droves. But I do think for people, this is going to be a way, if you're elderly and you want to kind of stay in the town, and maybe your kids want to move into your house, you can now build a ADU by right. And I think what's also really going to be critically important is that one of our most expensive things we're dealing with is healthcare, especially as we all get older. I think this could be transformational because if we can have, like I think of my own parents, they're great, they're in their 80s, but at some point they're going to slow down. And when that time they slow down, I'm going to have an option, a couple options. I could probably put them in assisted living, which could cost me, in a lot of you, maybe $20,000 a month, $15,000 a month. Or maybe what I do is maybe I say, I'm going to put on an accessory dwelling unit. Maybe I have a nurse come in a couple hours a day. That I think my parents would appreciate. I think I'd feel better about it. And there'd be a huge savings to everybody, myself, and also the state. So that's why I think this is so important. The other thing which is controversial is a thing called the MBTA zoning. This basically says to communities that if you're around transit, you need to build housing. And I will tell you that we had the town meeting in Andover last night. It was controversial. And somebody said that, well, this was voted by legislators 3 years ago, and they were kind of, they didn't know what they were doing, or they were just trying to pass the buck. Well, I got up in town meeting and I said, I want everybody to know this. And I want all of you to know this too. I voted for that because I thought it was the right thing to do. And if we don't have more housing in these areas, like Andover, North Andover, we're not going to get young people back. We're not going to give an option to our seniors to have more affordable housing. And we're just not going to be competitive as a state. And these decisions aren't easy, but I think it's a thing we really need to do. In the long term, I think will pay dividends for communities like North Andover. The other thing that, as chair of economic development that we're working on, is we have an economic development bill. And what we say there is, what can we do? What can we invest in that we can continue to grow our lead and continue to grow jobs? And some of that area is biotech, clean tech, and areas that in robotics, like we all toured the new Amazon facility, which is truly amazing. Congratulations to this town for landing such an impressive company and an impressive site. But it's not humans that are doing all the picking over there. It's these incredible robotics that can go up to 25 miles an hour, picking up all the stuff that we send out every day to people who get the Amazon packages. That robotics technology is built here and designed here in Massachusetts. And we want to continue to make sure that we're growing a lead on that stuff. And there's other things that we're not gonna probably put funding towards, but we got to make sure that we continue to lead on. We know from COVID that people want education. We are the leader in the world in education. We're the leader in the world in healthcare. And whether we like it or not, we have amazing defense here. Raytheon, which is right next door, because of what's happening in our world, whether we like it or not, has a $180 billion backlog of work. And some of their biggest challenges are like, we have all this business coming in, but we can't find the people to do these jobs. And the thing that's amazing about Raytheon is that you can work at Raytheon have a high school degree and make six figures. So one of the things we're thinking about in the economic development bill is how do we make sure we train people to get the jobs that are available? How do we partner with our technical schools? How do we partner with our community colleges? And how do we make sure that we have a well-educated workforce for the 21st century? So those are some of the things that we're doing in the economic development bill. I think the other thing that I want to mention I've always talked about these two U.S. senators from New York. There was these two U.S. senators. One was named Alphonse D'Amato, and one other was named Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And they were totally polar opposites. Exactly. Daniel Patrick Moynihan was this incredible thinker. He did big things like economic development bills. And then there was another senator named Alphonse D'Amato, who got the nickname Pothole D'Amato because he was so good at constituent services. So as much as I want to continue to do things like privacy, I want to do things like economic development, constituent services is also really important to me, and making sure that we deliver on local projects as well. And since that we've been, in the Senate, we've delivered on public school literacy grant for $25,000, pickleball courts, hopefully people like pickleball, $55,000. Just be careful. A lot of people have been hurting their Achilles, so don't overdo it in there. Electric parking stations for $25,000. North Andover food security, $50,000. Veterans Memorial at North Andover Middle School, $25,000. And then recently, Representative Wynn got pedestrian safety measure on Main Street. And the reason why I bring those up is that all of that stuff was not our idea. It was people in this community's idea. Say, this is where we need help. And I think what Steve Grossman used to say, you have one mouth and two ears. And the reason for that is you need to listen more than you speak. And one of the best things that we do is we listen. And with some people like Janice and Olivia and Dennis and Betsy and the staff that I have, we value listening, but we also value that when there's an issue, whether it's a Medicaid issue, whether it's an RMV issue, whether it's a passport issue, we're here to help. And that's what we also want to be known for as well. Any issue you have, whether small, big, we want to be helpful for that. So with that, I want to just say, thank you for giving me the time to speak. There's some other things that we can talk about. I know there's a lot of people are concerned about what's going on with Stewart Health, any issues like that. But I really want to just open it up for all of you right now, and feel free to answer any questions that you have that I can answer. All right.
Andy Furman, thank you for coming out, and thank you for all your support and your office's support.
Does he need a mic by a chance, or would it be okay? Because
I don't need a mic.
No, just for the table.
I can talk about it.
We have one of our great select board members.
We do, look at that.
I also be remiss if I didn't recognize our former state rep, Christina Minikucci, as well. So. Stand up, Christina.
Not sure I can follow Christina. Barry, thank you to you for coming out and for your office.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts on everything that you've talked about. Sure. But the first was you opened up with youth sports, and from somebody that has been very ingrained in youth sports as an official, as a coach, as a parent, there's a gentleman by the name of John O'Sullivan who has started the Changing the Game project. I implore you to reach out to John and to have a conversation.
Love to. This is such a new area that we need all the people that we can get on the subject matter.
When we talk about this, you hit it on the head. When most people talk about youth sports and changing the game, we talk about not yelling at officials. But what John has talked about is the specialization in youth sports. 70% of kids who specialize in youth sports either have a serious sporting injury that ends their career by the age of 14, or they get burnt out and quit by the age of 14. So it's a very serious topic. On the topic of housing, it affects seniors so much. Seniors are being pushed out of every single community across our Commonwealth. So as we look at senior housing, when we look at, topics that you've talked about, keeping our seniors in our communities is exceptionally important. So I implore you to continue to look at that. And then the last thing I'll say is not necessarily on our local or state delegation, but as it affects North Andover. One of the biggest things I've been most disappointed about over the last 12 months is the support from our national delegation when it came to the floods back in August. Your office was here, your office was present. There were many other state delegates that were present, but our national delegation was absent. And that's not on you, that's not on our state delegates, but we need to get our national delegation on those types of things.
And one thing just on that, so I don't want to speak for the national delegation, but we were able to get some money for the town, not as much as I hope, and we were able to get, through a local credit union, we were able to get, relief for some people that took advantage of that. So that is an issue that we have to figure out, the disasters, because with climate change, unfortunately, this is going to happen more and more. We don't want to be people's insurance, but every so often, there is a time where insurance doesn't cover things, or there's such things that happen so out of the blue that there isn't a solution for it. So, and I also think that, flood insurance, if you live in a flood zone, you can get flood insurance, but if you don't live in a flood zone, you can't get insurance. But then if you get flooded, your insurance doesn't cover it. So there's such problems with flood insurance that I still think that's an issue we have to continue to work on.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And don't be afraid to say your name, this way.
My name is Ellen.
Good to see
This
you.
is my spouse, Dave.
Steve.
As a professional, I was a nurse, and in my last part of the years I worked as a nurse, I focused primarily on hospice care and geriatric care. And last week we visited a couple who have been dear friends for a long time, and her husband has had a long cancer diagnosis, and it's a very long, slow death march. And her comment to me is, Ellen, as a nurse, when will Massachusetts pass legislation that allows for death with dignity, or call it whatever you want the bill to be called? But she said, aren't we there yet? And I couldn't give her an answer, but I am hoping that we will be there soon.
Yeah, first of all, I support that. And, there's so many other states that have already passed it. And the thing is, it's not like these are states that are all over the political map. So it's not like it's a left-right thing. There's a lot of states that have already passed it. And I'm not sure why we haven't passed it, because I think, if this is something that you've expressed in some form of a documentation, or something that if you're in a sound mind that you want to do, I don't see why you shouldn't have the option to do that. So that's something I'll continue to support. Oh, did I do that good that all of you stumped all of you? Nothing to say. Okay, sure.
You mentioned Stewart, and I moved to the Merrimack Valley about 30 years ago.
Yep.
One of the concerns about moving here was the quality of healthcare. It has not gotten any better, and in fact, many of the hospitals contraction in the hospitals, the Stewart situation, which affects not only Holy Family, but Dana-Farber, who does a lot of its services out of Holy Family. These are all concerns for, I think, all of us in the Merrimack Valley.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I've one of my children was delivered at Lawrence, two were delivered at Lowell General. I've had operations at Holy Family. I think that, unfortunately, since Stewart has taken over, the healthcare has really gone down. And what we're really trying to do is we're trying to find who is the next person that's going to take it over, and how are they going to operate and make things better. I think one of the challenges that we do have is that, and this has been a big issue I've really pushed for, is that when we look at what we get reimbursed for Medicaid rates, it is not financially viable to run these hospitals. The other thing which frustrates me, if someone gets a mammogram in Boston, they'll get reimbursed like $250. And probably in our hospitals, we only get reimbursed $100. So why do we allow what I call discrimination in healthcare, where if you're in a poorer area, such as Lawrence or Lowell, why are you getting less money for the same exact procedure in something like Boston? It makes no sense. And then when it comes to reimbursement from the major healthcare companies, we also get less money. So this has been a kind of a ball rolling down the hill where it continues to get worse and worse because we're not getting the funding we should. So I think that we have to get the funding structure right. We need a partner in there that can make sure these hospitals are run well. And I think our healthcare can become better because it does matter what we have for healthcare. It does matter that we have a healthy population. And to your point is that with Stewart right now, I don't think anybody's comfortable with that hospital. So, but that is something that we're working on right now. But it's a great point.
Hi, I'm Gail.
Hey, Gail.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
I have a lot to ask, but I'll keep some of it short. So we're talking about a building here in North Andover, which I know is a big on both sides issue, especially on a wetland. Anyway, my only concern is we keep talking about anything that's close to the MBTA, and our MBTA is so outdated that I can't even get a straight bus trip to Mass General. And I'm not using that as a situation, well, that is one situation, but I think that if we're going to be building all this, we need to look into more of the infrastructure of transportation, affordable, more direct. We're more archaic than most of the rest of the country that has better systems than we do. So that's one of the things I think we need to look into is different ways of having transportation. You talked about the sort of 25 to 44 leaving. It's not affordable to live in here, and I know my taxes keep going up, and I'm a senior citizen, and it's like, wait a minute, why am I paying for everybody else? And then having to work because I have to pay taxes or I have to come up with all this. So I think we need to look at the, yes, you all have to get paid, but we have to really look at the tax structure of what's happening, not only in property taxes, but across the board of, what people are paying to survive nowadays.
A couple, let me make sure I got it, Mo. So the first thing is with the T. I actually do think Phil Lang, who's a new head of the T, he's doing as good of a job as possible. We in the legislature and the government have not done a good job these last 30 years of keeping up with the maintenance. And because of that, we're seeing things break down. And our trains have to be more reliable. We need more trains coming out on the Haverhill, Reading, Andover line. And we got to make sure that this stuff, when it says it's going to pick you up at 7:47, that the train's there in 7:47. But a lot of that is infrastructure and making sure that we're putting the money we need to. So I do hope that we are going to go in the right direction and the T is going to get better. Your second question was affordable housing, was that? Yeah. I do think that for younger people, we have to give them more options. And the only way we have more options is if we produce more housing. It just, what shocks me is what people have to pay to buy a house now. And with higher mortgage rates, people having mortgage payments of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, like, I don't understand how people can afford this. So that's what's concerning is that, our younger people going to come back here, and the data we're seeing is they're leaving our state. And in the long term, that is not good for us. So we have to have more production for housing. And then your third thing was taxes. Okay. Have you ever looked at the senior circuit breaker? So we do have, programs for seniors, and I'd love to have my staff see if that might be available to you. So there's certain thresholds you have to meet, but we do have programs that if you do own a house, that if you are put in X amount of dollars to local property taxes, then there's a way to kind of write some of that off. So if we make sure that we connect, so Dennis has given me the big connect, so we'll make sure we do that. So.
We're facing an issue with National Grid again. Not even so much.
Don't get Janice started on National Grid, boy.
Oh, Janice has heard this out of me. I can't
So
tell you how many
she's on a
times.
warpath with them.
And I'm not even talking about how difficult it is to get the lights back on.
Yeah.
I'm talking about they want to raise the transfer fees again.
Yep.
So we have a fantastic town choice program here, which brings the cost of the kilowatt hours, the actual electricity we use, significantly lower than we would if we were on National Grid.
Yeah.
But the transfer rates are going up and up and up. And now I can get into the how long it takes to turn the lights back on after we lose the power, which is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? We have seniors. We have people who are considered disabled. We have people who just live alone and maybe not know how to, something as simple as find an emergency place to stay when we don't have power. We have issues where people might need insulin to be refrigerated, for example. I could list a billion things, and I'm sure you could list another billion more things. What is the state doing to put National Grid in check? Because I have an all-electric home, and on a budget plan, I pay roughly $500 a month in electricity, more than half of which isn't my consumption. It's my transfer rates. What is the Commonwealth going to do to keep them in check? Because right now, at least in this area, they're a monopoly. Last time I saw that, it was Ma Bell, and we broke them apart.
Yeah. I think, first of all, I think when it comes to the storms, we've really been pushing for them to get the power back on. And I give Janice a lot of credit. Like, she's on them 24/7, 7 days a week. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, we push to have these choice of where we want to go with, saving money and giving more funding to renewables. I'll look into the transfer stuff. That's, somewhat of a new thing. So I will look into that and try to find out why that is so expensive, and, maybe bring National Grid out here and maybe they can explain it to us. But we'll definitely take a look into that.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you. First, thank you for the delicious cookies, much better than computer cookies. So
There you go. All right.
that's kind of you. If you'll permit an observation,
Sure.
I have a pretty sad life. I actually observed the Andover town meeting yesterday and the day before, and did it because I wanted to see how our much younger sister community would actually act around the MBTA bill, housing bill, because we'll be facing it ourselves on May 14th at 6:30, an invitation for everybody to come. You alluded to what I thought, and this is just an observation, I thought was an incredibly courageous political moment when you got up to claim responsibility for the MBTA bill. And I wanted to note to you that as an elected official, I appreciated you taking that responsibility, that the community at large may not appreciate the judgments that you have to make, but to step up in a fraught environment where there are a lot of people who were not supportive and were not knowledgeable, I appreciated, and I know that happens all too frequently in these kind of public settings. And I just wanted to thank my senator for having that severity.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate that. I think one of the reasons why I did want to, first of all, I got called out, but that's why I had to come out and defend myself. But one of the points I wanted to make was that I've had a blessed life where, my family first started off in government housing. It's kind of my family story. Give me 30 seconds and I won't build it. But my dad wanted to play in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And unfortunately, it wasn't good enough. He never could crack that, being in there. So he was kind of trying to do all these different jobs. And finally, my mom sat him down and said, buddy, you got to go get a teaching job. And this is almost 40 years ago. And there was this new community college called Northern Essex. And basically, he was their first ever music professor. And that's why we moved up to the Merrimack Valley. And my mom was a teacher, my dad was a teacher. And we were able to live in a town like Andover, which is very similar, obviously, to North Andover. But my point is that I got that opportunity. Because of that, I went to amazing public schools. I went on to college, law school, and have had a blessed life. And I think it's very important for someone like me to say, you know what, I want the next person to have that same type of opportunity. Because it was a heck of a lot affordable for when my parents came in there. It was a heck of a lot affordable when I bought my first condo when I was 27. It's a great story, too. So I was living at home, and there used to be this political columnist called Howie Carr. And he did a number on me for living at home and being a state rep. So I said, you know what, I got to move out of the house. And I bought a condo way back when, but the point was, it was so much more affordable. And once again, I had that opportunity. And I think that's why we all should try to pay it forward, to give that next person that same type of opportunity. Because communities like North Andover, they're amazing communities. They have amazing schools, they're amazing towns, and you know, it can do wonders for you if you're given the opportunity. So thank you for saying that. Anything else? Well, listen, I don't want to keep you all, because it seems like, as I said to you, the sun's coming out and it's getting nice out there. But I just want to really, recognize my staff, Olivia, who's here, Janice, who works with me as well, Betsy, where's Dennis? Dennis over there, and Erin, who's not here tonight, because they're the ones who make me look good. They're the ones who work incredibly hard. Sometimes 7 days a week. I'm an early riser. Sometimes I get a text or an email from me at 5, 6 in the morning. But these are all the people you should thank as well, because they make me look good. And once again, I want to thank the Senior Center for having me. And most of all, thank you for allowing me to do this amazing job. I'm humbled to do it. It's an honor each and every day, and I just really am grateful. So thank you all very much. Do you have the person? So I have one more citation. Okay. So Bill, come on up here. So we're going to kind of give this through you to Brian, but we just want to say, in recognition of your years of dedication to serving the community through your leadership at North Andover CAM, thank you for doing that. Thank you for informing people about what's going on in the community. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success. This is signed by the Senate President Karen Spilk and myself, State Senator Barry Finegold. So congratulations. Thank you for what you do for the community.
If I may speak for Brian.
Absolutely. All right, you gotta get a photo. You gotta get a photo.
Oh, yes, of course.
Thank you all so much. There's cookies, there's water, there's Cheez-Its, and other fun stuff. So thank you all very much.